Hey everybody, Italy is out now, so let's take a look at the patch. Before we do that, just a quick heads up, this costs €9.99 or whatever it is in your local currency. I don't know if or to what extent Eugen does local pricing. I think they used to, but I was under the assumption that they stopped doing that. I don't know. Either way, that's the price at least in euros and probably in dollars as well, at least American dollars. More in Canadian, I presume. Whatever in Australia. I have no idea. Either way, that's not what this is about. This is about the patch, of course. I should also give a brief disclaimer. I did have, as most probably is of you assume or even know, I did have an impact on those changes, as well as a few other people. Because, in all honesty, Eugen would not come up with those themselves. That said, of course, we didn't just have a free hand, Eugen still had to accept and go over the changes before putting them in themselves, which meant that we couldn't do whatever we wanted. And of course, on a personal level, in some areas I would have liked to do more, nerf slash buff some units more or less. So this is not, in my eyes, 100% perfect, but it's like 95%, right? I fully think that this entire patch and DLC is a huge net positive for the game. I would have liked to see essentially like a couple more changes, specifically nerfs to something, but still 99% of those changes I absolutely like. There's like 1% where I'm like, I'm not sure if this was necessary, but it's probably not a big deal. But it's enough about that. Let's actually take a look at the changes, huh? And let me actually make this a bit bigger. I know it should be big enough for you, I reckon, right? Let's just do a small little zoom here, right? Of course, everything will be linked in the description. So, data fixes. Sounds boring, but it's actually not as boring as you might think it is. Sherman HE Ratifier match AP1. They had different ratifiers for HE and AP. I believe, what is it? Is it 9? Yeah, it used to have 8 RPM for HE. So, yeah, and the game doesn't show you that, right? Because technically the heat and, well, not technically, really, actually, the AP and the HE things, they're actually two different weapons. So you could have wildly different stats for the HE weapon than like accuracy, range, and fire wise than you could for the AP, and that has been the case sometimes. Not necessarily wildly, but tank ranges being one step lower or lower accuracy or lower rate of fire in this case has happened before. The Challenger 1 had that issue as well and got it fixed with the South Africa DLC, for example. So yeah. Added a radar trait to automatic in LVKV90 scan. And that is because, same thing here, I believe it was the HE or the AP, either of those two guns didn't have the radar tag. So there was some cheating, I guess you could say, you could do. Sound effect localization, whatever. The past Isvidyach, which is the recon spec thing, as well as the RAM TCM and the Mistral, didn't have increased air optics against planes, right? Um, Against helicopters, you use ground optics, so that worked well. But it didn't have increased optics against air, which doesn't really make a lot of sense when even Mistrals or something get that. So it's a nice little buff. And the ZSU, just there's various ones, of course. And Poland has it, I think. North Korea. How many ZSUs are there actually? There's only two actually. Well, and a German one. Yeah. The AP accuracy used to be 5% more. That got fixed now. It's a nice, neat little buff. FOB HP increased from 20 to 30. Of course, if you look at it in game, there's more than 20/30 HP, but essentially it got a 50% HP increase. The mechanized stack got reworked, or adjusted. Reworked is maybe an exaggeration. You lose the, as you might have seen already, you lose the veterancy on infantry, but gain it on the vehicles. So you can still spam infantry, have the wild variety of it as well with those 9 slots, but you don't get the additional benefit of them being also just stronger, which I think makes more sense. It's still very much about spam, but now you have to have an increased focus on the vehicle tab, which sure some nations benefit a lot more than others, but it should also make meh vehicles at least worth taking now because the slots are also cheaper. It's, I think, a neat little way to nerf Mechanized without getting rid of its identity or just making it unplayable. I've read some people saying that, oh my god, my DGC mech is now so weak. It's still very, very good. Don't be under the assumption that mech decks are suddenly trash now. I feel like some people are overreacting. ACP 23 Amors real time reduced. That is Shilkas and Biryusas and such. They had a long reload time between salvos and it got reduced a bit so that they can shoot at more than one helicopter in a short span of time. SPG 9, 9D, and Type 68 RCL reload time reduced. That is, for example, found on the SPG 9 team that has 10 RPM now, up from 7, so it's not hot garbage anymore. It's probably still not amazing, but might be worth taking like a motor deck or something now. I think this also is part of this thing here, the USZ, and the SPG 9 recoilless rifle on a vehicle, and it also includes the Biban Chung Po as well as Gong Bob Yong. All right, now let's get to the specifics. Various availability bonus increases. For Commonwealth specifically, this now means 4 per card units are 5 per card. For example, the Warrior CV. For South Africa, this means that 2 per card units become 3 per card now, which comes also into play when it comes to the Cheetah, which got an availability nerf. Launch it from 15 to 20 just to give them a bit more oomph. All F104s are fastener, which for Italy is of course a big deal, but as many have already pointed out, the DGC Prime Helo Hunter, the F104G, it's actually a nerf to it, because the lower speed makes it much better against helicopters. I can understand why people are sort of upset about this, but in all honesty, it's not like DGC was really at the bottom of the barrel. They were very strong themselves, so while it wasn't a targeted nerf at the deck, it's not like the deck is really gonna be hurting from it. Plus, you have the Rigan Tiger, you have the bow and the helicopter tap in DGC. The Dutch, yeah, they're not gonna like it massively, but you still have lost. It's not like it's garbage. It's still 60 points with the name 9, right? So, yeah. RB-28 Falcon, I think that's a missile for the Dragon. I think Finland also has it. It's 5 PG now. AGM-122, that is the seed missile on the Super Cobra. It can now one-shot up to 3 armor, which is, for example, a Gepard. Before, you couldn't even kill a Gepard with this with one shot up front. Automatic got nerfed, reduced accuracy, and reduced damage from 3 to 2.5. Renamed an unsung supply truck. SASR got reduced by 5 points. There are those special forces, which is alright. Do you get them in the ASLEF? I know you can't see the left side, so I'm doing it like this. So in motor or something, maybe you're gonna take them. Like, they're alright. Answer gets a new unit. That is this Rican Leopard, which is essentially a Leopard AS1 with the modern ammo, right? It's got the 17 AP that you'd get from 1995 onwards, but the reduced range and accuracy that the AS1 has. It's pretty neat. It's like in between something like a Vercanning and those like low tier Rican tanks. So it's like in its own kind of tier. It's also got like a new paint job. Napalm Plane, increased availability. I'm only gonna go through, or I'm gonna skip some of the less impactful ones because otherwise this would be really long. And obviously you can read for yourselves, right? Or just stop, and if you're actually curious about this, you can always just stop and pause it, look at it for yourself, etc. Right? Chimera HE from 3 to 4, just essentially a fix, but it's neat because the Chimera is honestly already pretty good, and with it being available in mech and coming in the vehicle tab, if you're playing a mech deck, just okay. If you're playing a mech deck, then gets +2 veterancy, right? FKP price reduction, it's like one of those changes where I'm like, I'm not sure. And neither the Jaeger the 90. I don't think it's like hugely impactful. Like it's not gonna suddenly make something OP. I didn't think it was necessary. M41A1, the Recon one, from 10 to 15. Big deal and important deal because that thing was busted at 10. The Block 5 got a 10-point price increase. Honestly deserved. It was like a ridiculously good cluster plane, and now it's more in line of where it should be. AMX 1390, 5-point price increase, also necessary because that thing is just, in my eyes, it could still be 35, but Tiger's got a small stealth reduction. It still displays as good, but it's from 1.75 down to 1.6. A value of 1 would mean no stealth, right? It also goes for the German Tigers, you'll see in a second. Mirage 5F, that is this bomber, is 3 per card now. It's still not great, but it's cheaper, and you get 3 per card. So if you want a bomber in Eurocode, you at least have another somewhat okay option. Mirage F1CT got a price reduction as well, just to make more clusters viable. It doesn't have like the same oomph as like the Block 5, but obviously 40% ECM, much more survivable. AMX 13 VTT, together with other 3 armor 5-pointers, have an availability reduction, which means that you get lower availability with line infantry and reservists on them. Most shock infantry should not be affected from those changes, but it's mainly about line infantry and reservist spam in those very high armor transports being at least a bit reduced. And for those nations that have multiple options, they're to have at least in some situations be an incentive to not always maybe go for that transport. Tiger stealth reduced as well for the German Tiger. Marder 2 price increased by 5 points. Not a huge deal because it's already relatively expensive, coming with shock infantry as well, but it was a bit overperforming. HVMS has HE rounds. Now you've seen this on the Italian HVMS guns as well. It's 40 points now, but has HE. I think this is really good for Israel. This is really a unit that or a type of unit that they really need, like a relatively strong flank holder that can also shoot at infantry. Should help a bit. Parry front armor increase from 6 to 8. The Kerners is now 1 per card, but you get 2 cards. So if you want 2 Kernerses, you need to, well, essentially use more than twice the activation points now, as well as, of course, using another plane slot. Up to 5 additional AP, of course, for the 5th slot. So especially mixed decks are gonna feel this one. Israel, probably not as much because they would usually run 5 planes anyway, although the 5th one was always like kind of a toss-up of what you'd use. You're probably gonna run those 2 in Israel now. Blue, mixed, you might still run them both, but it's gonna hurt a lot more now. Givati and Sananim now have the base RPG 7 because apparently Israel never had the 7V, but both get a 5-point price buff. And the Sanhanim 95 alternate availability bonus. So Sanhanim, they're both shock, Givati being Marines and Sanhanim being airborne / moto. Givati being 15 men as well, and that Sanhanim being like a sort of blue for Motritzen as well now. Bedouins, those are those awful line recons with like no AT at all. They're now 10 points. Ram TCM, just like the past is Judge, as you might have seen, is 35 points now. The Nets, that's Israeli cluster plane, is also cheaper now. Where is it? This one. Ra'am is cheaper and has better veterancy. That is this LGB plane. Chumat has access to the Kyoroku and the Hachiko Shiki, these transports here, just like the Stinger and PSAM. So Mech and Moto get them in additional transports, which is neat. The Dutch AMX 13 and Recon Type also got a 5-point price nerf. This thing here also, in my eyes, could be 40 points. And the MX 13 that the Dutch have also got the same availability nerf. NASAM's aim time got reduced, but time increased between 2 shots. What does this mean? So the ASAMs used to be, so the NASAMs used to be the only radar missile, anti-air missile system with an aim time of 1 full second. All other radar SAMs have 0.2 seconds, which for one makes it more consistent with that, and also less getting bullied by helicopters because it takes so long to aim at them. Time between 2 shots increased means it won't pump out missiles as fast, just to massively reduce overkill. But what you have to keep in mind, right? By reducing the time between aiming and the first missile coming out by essentially 0.8 seconds, you practically will still get like the first 3, maybe, I think the first 3 missiles come out at the exact same time as before. However, of course, the very first one comes out much earlier. It's basically a buff for the unit in almost all aspects. Of course, there are some niche situations where you actually want or need to have like all 6 missiles out on a single plane or some stuff like that, in which case, yes, it technically would be a nerf. But in every other situation, it's basically a buff to the unit. The Bell 412 is one of the helicopters. Speed increased. KAV 4050, that is a prototyped South Korean grenade launcher transport, is now 10 points, as it used to be way in the back, by the way, way back when. Habyong Base got price reduced. Many 15-man squads, just like the Givati, for example. Many of the old, like 1975 15-man squads with basic AT weapons got the price reduced to 20 points. You'll see that trend. Aito Hilo is cheaper. Peace Pheasant 1, that's the HE bomber, is now cheaper in 3 cards. K9 Thunder has a longer salvo, basically a buff. Base Buffaloes, South African 15-man squads are 20 points now. Increased availability of the Buffalo because apparently it used to reduce availability of a few units. The 76mm Roy card now has 9 RPM. Logam gets 2 cards. The Optimum is in Moto. It's a prototype, by the way, so don't worry too much about that. Cheetah D is now 2 per card. However, when you play South Africa, it's 3 per card still. Cheetah D2 flies higher now, I believe. That's the laser guided bomb plane. Trackers are also 10 points, just like the Bedouins. SRV 103D is in Moto. It's also a prototype, so don't worry. 105 optics increased to medium. The Wiggins nose gun got buffed, essentially. Okay, this is interesting. The Saracen. That's the transport used by territorials. They're 5-man reservists. This thing here. It's now also 5 points. It's weird, but it's also only 5 HP. The reservists themselves are pretty weak. The transport is pretty weak itself. So this way, you know, it's an interesting little buff. It's 5 HP, just like the Mosegris, for example, used by the Danish reservists, right? This thing here, which is also 5 points. The Falcon, also I think worth pointing out. This little piece of something has twice the ammo now and increased accuracy. It used to run out of ammo so quickly, and it's got a neat little DPS buff, so that should help it. Chieftains, 2 of them, 5-point price buff. Jaguar is now 3 card, the GR1, 60-point cluster plane. Way underrated unit. It's still very good, honestly, but it's not as spammy anymore. Base US Marines are cheaper. LVTP-7A1, that's the grenade launcher one, also 10 points now, like the KAFE for South Korea. All the Bushmasters, and that includes the Bradleys, have the rate of fire increase from 207 to 300, making it just a stronger autocannon. I don't know why they put it under the US, because the ASLEF, for example, also has an increased rate of fire. But yeah, it's a neat little buff for a lot of those vehicles. The longbow has an increased aim time, so it has an aim time of 1 second now on its Hellfires. Before, they would essentially be fired the second you, or the instant you were in range of the unit. So yeah, it's a neat little nerf that I think was necessary because it was just incredibly frustrating unit. If you catch your opponent's tank or something like off guard without AA, you will still murder those tanks, right? It's just that you can't just be in range for a split second, move out again, and get a salvo off, right? That was just annoying. AGM 65E Maverick salvo reload time reduced means that those semi-active Hornets, semi-active Mavericks can actually both be fired in one run. Fighting Falcon price reduced, that's again a cluster frame. It's also a neat little multi-roll with AIM 9Ms. Don't underestimate this little thing. It's 125 now. Nighthawk on Veterancy nerf, which was supposed to be like a neat little nerf. Now it's honestly a whatever change. I don't think it's really impactful. But it's not like we tested it, right? And then we were like, there's no need to really remove it. If it's a small little nerf, then better than nothing. It's because it's just honestly a cheesy unit and incredibly frustrating. Also, that K is not capitalized. Thunderbolt nerf to 155 and the M113A3 got the same availability nerf. I guess I can showcase it if I just go build an unspec deck. What the availability nerf for those 5 pointers looks like. So this is base 2016 and now it's 1814. It's not huge, but it's something. And for decks that have no availability bonus or something, that is actually sometimes worth considering. Maybe not when it's between 1 and 3 armor, but maybe when it's between 2 and 3 armor, which is a big deal. And then there is some kind of incentive to maybe go for one over the other necessarily. All right. That's NATO. Whew. Hacked. All BTR 60 PBs price reduced from 15 to 10. That does increase the Scott 2A and the OT64A. This does not include the Malyutka carriers. It also does not include the Tab 71, as it does have the late KPVT with 20% accuracy. But all the one armor wheel transport with the basic KPVT and nothing else are now also 10 points. Big deal. Decreased RPT reload time. In practical terms, this means it's now a stat clone of the Cold LMG, which is just, yeah, a decent MG. Well, rate of fire-wise, right? The RPT has more range but less accuracy. It also has higher suppression than the Cold LMG. But rate of fire-wise is not the same. T55 AM and AM2 price reduced by 5. MI35 and VP are now 4 per card. The MI24V is now 4 per card as well, and it got a price reduction. So it's less of a... Yeah, it's more viable to bring now because you can upgrade it and still get 3. It's cheaper. Yeah. The vehicle-mounted T1021 Taras needs got an accuracy bump. Those things you can find on the Vitra. This now has 40% instead of 20%, as well as this thing here, OT62B. I think there's also a CB with it. Maybe there isn't. Tunguska's price reduced from 85 to 75. BTR-88 got an increased availability, so you lose less per card when you take units in them. T72M is 50 points. M1 is 70 points. That does not include the East German one because that one's different from all the others. But this one is now 50 points, which is neat. As I've said earlier, those ZSUs also got increased range on the ground units, together with increased accuracy and the Mech Vet buff. You will see maybe those. You will possibly see those a lot more now. China. Tanga Shasho is now of the ZST 90. I think China and North Korea are worth pointing out because that deck might really be quite good now. Tanga Shasho now got a ZST 90. At least 95 one, so you can only really bring them in China. The Lushan Dui got a pseudo rework. Lushan Dui 90 at least. The AT weapon now is 525 meter range, which is also realistic, honestly. But it's also 5 points cheaper now, so there are 20 points now. And they come with the WC551. So they're cheaper and get the WC551. Really. So that's quite a buff. It's quite a squad now. CDC 59's got 5 point price buffs. The CDC 88A is 13 front armor now. Need a little armor buff. The PTCs in the vehicle type got an HE increase. And the 89 got an accuracy increase. The JH7, I think that is a very, very underrated and underappreciated change. Got a time over target increase. It used to be 75 seconds. Now it's 165. Although they forgot to increase the fuel. Not a huge deal, but... so So that's very, very neat. And the YJ7 got an increase in range. This makes it more survivable. Makes it slightly bit harder to dodge because it can fire earlier, so giving your opponent less time to react. And of course, you can circle with it a bit longer. So I think that's very underrated change on this unit. It's just it's not gonna suddenly transform it, of course, but I think those changes you won't really feel directly, but I think the unit just feels better now. And it's gonna be it's one of those things that if you didn't know about the changes, we'd be like, somehow this feels better, I just can't explain why, right? The PL11 found on the J8C got an accuracy buff, because that thing is basically the same missile as the Aspide 1A. It used to be 40%, so more accurate now. Also slightly increase the price on the J8C, but yeah, it's more HE now, so 6 HE as well, which means that one of each missile will confirm a kill. More suppression as well, but that's whatever. There's the OD64A price reduced from 15 to 10 as well. BMP2s, or in this case BVP2, they're all 20 point now. Basic ones, the one with the Conquerors, they're all 20 point now, down from 25. Is a Polish one with the W? Yeah. And the East German one is 50 now, because that one has the much older autocannon with less range and less accuracy than the Finnish one. So kind of like a Mara, and you get the mid-400s, of course. So yeah, BP2 buffs, both with and without autocannon. Ondava fires faster now. Panzerjäger get the BMP2, Wachregiment are 20 points as well. Spezialaufklärer are armored. There's the BMP2 price buffs. The MiG-25 bomber from East Germany is also cheaper now. KT has an availability penalty, which you will mainly feel on line infantry. And their Bushmaster, as well as the Riken KT, is now Bushmaster 1. A late Bushmaster 1. So the one with 3 AP and 60% accuracy. Now, with the rate of fire increase on the Bushmasters, it still is a nerf. Right? You still have a 25% lower rate of fire. Or the CV9 is a 25% higher rate of fire. Is probably the correct way to phrase this. And of course, it has one more AP. So it's still a nerf. A suppression, okay, whatever. It's a nerf, but it's not as big as it would have if the Red Bushmaster of the Fire didn't get increased. E72 M1 mod is now 3 per card, like the Moderna. This also includes the BMP1 KT, by the way, which also got a small price buff as a result. Hawk 51 plane is from 60 to 70. And the KTs also got more ammo now, so they don't run out as quickly. Jagok Day, the North Korean Marines are also 20 points now. The 1991 spec has increased availability. The Tokchon, now that's an interesting one. The Tokchon is now 10 seconds aim time, because apparently it was actually a pretty modern system. At least by North Korean standards. Is it rude to say that? So it's 10 seconds aim now, which is neat. It's also only 6 HE, but it's also 100 points and has, I think it's 3 per card. I wonder if I don't think it's 6 per card, 4 per card in Red Dragons, but base availability is 3 per card, yeah. It's neat. You also get it in Mech and Armored. The Riken M1992 got the price reduced, and the MiG-29 has a significant range increase on its R27T. So it's significantly better against planes now, because you can fire it off earlier. It got a small veterancy reduction, but in testing it was still much, much better against planes. And it's, of course, still very, very good against helos. So, pretty neat. I say pretty neat very frequently in this video, huh? Gongbok Yong and the Jeongloch Dae, I don't know if that's how you pronounce them, got a BTRDA now, which is neat, especially for the Gongbok Yong. And then Poland, Niebieski Bereti are also 20 points now. There are 50-man Marine squads. The MTLB Krak is 10 points now. Scott 2A, BMP2 buffs, same as earlier. Sopel got an increased availability. Merida got a buff. Wilkes got a pseudo rework, if you will. They got in 1 armor increase to better model their armor package compared to normal M1s. Or the normal T72 armor package on the T72 M1 in this case, and I don't know whatever this is. And I got an accuracy / stabilizer increases as well. Technically, I believe they all should share the same accuracy and stabilizer, but Yujin wanted to slightly differentiate them a bit. Warsky Perota also 20 points now and got their ammo fixed. Tunguska M is cheaper, T55 AMV is cheaper. BRDM 3 is cheaper. Scratchhead got an availability nerf, so you get a slight availability penalty for your VDV squads. Same BMP2 buffs. Vasilek is much cheaper now. For Yugoslavia, the Hera is now more expensive, which it should be. The BVP autocannon got a significant accuracy reduction. Deservedly so. Coupled with the fact that mech doesn't get its its veterancy bonus on infantry anymore, there's quite a hefty hit on Onslaught mech, which in my eyes is arguably one of the strongest, arguably, I would say nowadays, pre-Italy, I would have said second strongest deck in the game for 1v1s, maybe the strongest. But those two nerfs are huge for the deck, and they serve, right? I was very much for both of those changes, right? I'm not complaining here. It was deserved for that deck. I'm just saying that this deck got deservedly a very big nerf through those two changes alone. But there's more. The M84AN is not in mech anymore either. This little piece of work. And instead got moved to Moto. Because the Moto deck is not like it's overperforming by any means. It gives it a bit of characteristics, and it removes the 84AN from a deck that is a bit problematic. It's also only 3 per card now, because Unspec is also a thing still, right? The Raketas got the same range increase, or the same range as the Firos does. So this is a very good unit now as well. It's just, it runs out of ammo much faster because it fires both simultaneously, but of course it also increases the burst damage. And then we also have the fast Isvidyach price reduction, as well as a small price increase on the Isvidyach T55. And that's the changelog. That's the patch. Who are the big winners, losers? The losers, of course, are mech decks. Onton mech, probably number one loser here. Scandi also loses quite a bit. Automatic nerf, M41 nerf. Baltic, I'll be honest. Baltic Unspec kind of gains a bit with the mod buff. Baltic Moto doesn't get as big of a nerf as I would have liked and honestly hoped and tried to go for, but I was overruled. Now, whether you agree with me or not is of course a different story, right? If you don't agree with me, then you're like, yeah, fuck your ass, man. Damn straight that you got overruled. Which, you know, fair enough, it's your opinion. Commonwealth, especially mech, might be a sleeper hit. Because Aslast with the buffed Bushmasters, all the top dogs getting nerfed. Commonwealth actually making good use of its vehicle tab, so Commonwealth mech might look really cool now. Big scary thing, of course, is just Blue Moto. Because, unfortunately, stuff like that Centauros could not be prototyped. Now, it still gets nerfed a bit with the AMX13's nerf, especially with the Kernas nerf, but that is something that I'm unfortunately a bit scared of, and yeah, there's only so much we really could do, and we really tried hard to get some stuff prototyped, but yeah, we also could not, we suggested it, but we could not rename prototype to something like national asset. Yeah, was not on the table, I'm afraid. Red Dragons also, I think for real this time. Some people had hoped so with the South Africa patch, but for real this time, Red Dragons looking pretty solid for 1v1s especially. Top dogs getting nerfed, them getting some really good combos now with the WC 551 and Lujan Dui, the CTC being better, their ASFs being much better. TF89, even if it got the range reduction, at least it has it's much cheaper now as well to bring out, more affordable, and just much better because you do get the WC551 with it. So for Force especially, this should be nice. And honestly, Eastern Bloc Mech with the BMP2s that you get with Mordschützen should be pretty cool as well. Yep, looking really forward to how it checks out. And of course, at some point, I don't know if it's gonna happen today or on a different day, the leaderboard should also get reset. So yeah, let me know what you think of the patch, and I will hopefully see you next time. Bye bye.